You got the job and you should be excited. But instead, you're wondering if you made a huge mistake, and you're not alone. And no, you're not crazy for feeling this way. So let's talk about it. Welcome to Crossroads and Catalysts, the podcast with Shenita B. I am your host. This is where we discuss the thoughtful, wise, and strategic perspective at a crossroads can be the catalyst for change. Now, if this resonates with you, take a second to follow the show and leave a review. And don't forget to share it with a friend. And if you have a new job regret that you would like to share with me, send it to me via email at theshanita.brown@gmail.com. And you might just hear about it on a future episode. You barely made it through the onboarding process, assuming that there is one, and you realize, ooh, this might not be a good fit like I thought it was. Okay, so then what is it? Is it the culture? Is it the particular role? Am I missing out on having conversations with my leadership? And or did I just set some really high expectations and now it's proving to be a major disappointment? Well, a lot of people experience taking on a new job and then recognizing, oh, yeah, this is not going to work at all. And so this is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it because I definitely can relate because I've been there. And when you look more carefully at what takes place in jobs and different companies all over the place, they're made up of different people. There's a whole different culture microcosm that's taking place in these companies. There's a certain there's a brand, okay? And of course, as the public looks at these brands, they have an understanding as to what they think that brand is or that company is. And then the employees have a different understanding as to what it is according to their perspective. So you have these competing uh, perspectives that might not meet up with one another when you decide to take a job and then you start to see what it really is. And I want to make sure that I say from the start that I am not talking about toxic environments. Toxic work environments are no good for anyone. And if you find that you are in a toxic environment as a result of taking a new job, then you definitely want to consider uh, how you're going to respond in the more immediate future because those circumstances could be a little bit more a little bit different. So what's really going on when we talk about, okay, I don't like this job and I've only been here just a few weeks? Well, you can learn a lot about an organization in just a few weeks. Now, maybe you haven't learned quite enough to make a decision as to whether or not you should leave, but it is important because when you encounter a new culture, it makes a big difference as to how you carry out your duties. Because there's a certain mindset that comes along with the culture at an organization, and you want to be as informed as possible to help make that decision uh, much better. Because this could have some pretty significant impact on you. Well, what if it's the communication style? Maybe you're not able to communicate with your leader the way that you thought. Maybe you're recognizing that there's a complete breakdown regarding how information flows through the organization. And so it doesn't give you the opportunity to gain what it is that you need to carry out your duties, and nor are you able to transmit information in a timely manner to where it's relevant and can be utilized. So all of these things play a major role in how you carry out your job duties and whether or not that's going to be a good fit. Now, what if it turns out that there's a lack of structure and the leadership is really not leadership at all? They have the titles, but they really don't carry out their duties with maybe any seriousness or true commitment. Or maybe they're unwilling to make the hard decisions, which leaves you in your position in a very bad position. I've seen it. It's definitely not very comfortable, and it's something that you would want to address, but maybe you just don't know how. So that's just a few things. And then maybe there's this issue where you thought that you were going to be doing one thing and it turns out that you're doing something else. This is probably one of the biggest issues because there's a misrepresentation of what the job actually is to the candidate. And sometimes you can't ask enough questions to get the information that you need to make an informed decision. So it's either that you're not being utilized, your skill set is not being utilized at the top of its license, or you're overwhelmed with the work. There's so much of it that you won't be able to gain any ground because there's just too much. Maybe there's not enough resource available to handle the workload. And now you're stuck trying to figure out how you're supposed to get through this because it just seems impossible. So I definitely know what that's like. And so I want to share with you even my experience because again, because I can relate to this, it's I definitely understand the questioning of what decision did I make? How did I get here? Because I thought that I asked all the right questions in the interview. And the goal, of course, of asking these questions is to gather the information to help determine if this would be a good fit. This is what the interviewees are doing. This is what the interviewers are doing. Everybody is trying to put forth the best representation of themselves to show the other that, hey, I think that we could work well together. Well, that kind of all goes to the wayside when you step across that threshold and you start that new job and you realize that nothing is as it was explained to you. And it's not a good feeling because I went through that and I started recognizing very early that, oh gosh, I don't know that this is going to work out. And I had to stop and think, okay, what is it that I'm looking for in the long term? And is there anything of value that I can gain from this? But I and just going back even to the interview process, what it comes down to is transparency. If you know that you ask the right questions, what kind of challenges am I going to face? What is the average day look like? Who is involved in the work? Who will I be working most closely with? If you're asking all of those questions you asked all of those questions and you still feel like you made a mistake and that everything was misrepresented, it didn't have anything to do with you. It had everything to do with that organization, which can clearly go back to even some of the things that I just listed as far as being um, a mismatch of values or culture shock. That all falls in to those types of things, and it caused an issue for me. And I ultimately decided to stick around. But the reason why I decided to stick around was because I was able to use my skill set and apply it and at least make some changes in the short term until it was time for me to find something else down the road. And so it worked out. But I want to share with you some things that I think are important for you to consider as you're trying to figure out whether you should stay or whether you should go, because these are important. So, number one, you want to do a value assessment. And by that, I mean, is there anything that you can gain by staying at this particular position at this company in the way of career development? Can you sharpen your skills? Will you get the same level of exposure, or can you get exposure at this job that you might not gain anywhere else that can help you in the long term? And then, are there opportunities that are possible with this role that you might not otherwise have? And of course, you have to determine for yourself what does the long term look like for you. But this is extremely important as you're doing your assessment and trying to figure out, well, can I stick around? Because this has turned out to be way crazier than I thought that it would be. And then determine, like I said, how does that align for you? The second thing you should consider, write down what it is that you need. Good old fashioned pen and paper are helpful. So write down what you thought that you were going to be stepping into and what it is that you've stepped into, and then what will it take to get you where you think you need to be in relation to this job. And is there a realistic opportunity for you to even influence those things? Now, of course, all of this depends on what level of the role it is that you've taken. And if you're a leadership, maybe you have the opportunity to make some changes that will be extremely impactful, not only to you, but to others. And maybe not, but you have to consider that and then ask for that because that's the next thing. Once you understand what it is that you need from this role, now you want to have a conversation with your manager, and you definitely want to make it clear that, hey, I thought that this is what I was going to be doing, but it turns out that this is the type of work that has been handed to me. And so I want to make sure that I understand what it is that you expect, because there's not a match here with what my expectations were, and just make that very clear, because that's extremely important. And you want to communicate that as clearly and as effectively as possible so that you can get on the same page, if that's possible, with your manager. And I just want to make sure that you understand too that it is normal to feel overwhelmed when you start a new job. Now, along with that excitement and being happy and joyful that you have it, you're learning a new system, a new organization rather. And again, you're stepping into a culture that might be completely different from the one that you left or even what you expected. And so you should not expect that everything is going to always go very smoothly, but you definitely don't want to live in perpetual overwhelm, because it's just going to overstimulate your system and you're not going to be as productive as you thought that you would be. So keep that in mind, because at some point in time, you hope to be relieved of the overwhelm, and you don't want to make a decision based solely on the feeling of overwhelm. The fourth thing that I want to mention is you want to set up a short term checkpoint for yourself, whether that's 30 days, if because again, if you've recognized very early that, oh, this might not be a good fit, and by early, I mean within the first week or two, then maybe you wait out 30 days to see, okay, is anything any better? Did I misunderstand something or misconstrue it to some degree? And just evaluate what this looks like at the end of that period. And you have to be the one to determine what that is. Because if you've worked past the overwhelm and now you're able to more clearly understand what the role requires, and if you want to do that, then it may be a good thing for you. So just take your time. And then also, you do not want to forget, you got to be financially stable. You don't want to make a rash decision because you don't like the culture, or maybe you don't even like your leader, which would be one of the worst things ever, right? But you don't want to make a decision abruptly and put yourself in a financial pinch because you don't like the manager. So just consider those things very carefully, because time is can actually work on your side in a situation like this. Nobody wants to be hired, just like a company doesn't want to hire you. And then 30, 60, 90 days, you have to part ways from one another because it wasn't a good fit. You don't want to feel like your time is wasted and your resources have been wasted. And they certainly don't want to feel the same way, because it does. It costs time and it costs money. And that's on both sides. And not to mention, it's just exhausting to go through it. And especially if it turns out that your assessment is as you deemed that it would be, and it's just not working out. That can be one of the most frustrating and stressful things that you can encounter, which is why I want you to really carefully consider, is there something that you can gain from sticking around to help you in your long term career goals? So then sometimes the discomfort is a detour, but it's not a dead end. And other times it's a red flag. So, like I said, if it's a toxic environment, I think you know that you have to make some moves sooner than later. But if it's not a toxic environment, and it just comes down to really just better understanding what you're supposed to do and getting past the overwhelm, then you might find that it could be something that will be helpful to you, not only while you're there, but in the event that you decide to leave at some point in the future, you at least are taking something with you, which will be helpful. And then finally, you're not obligated to continue in any job. All of us have made not so good decisions regarding particular jobs that we've taken, because we thought that we were going to gain something from it, and we were hired. The company hired us because they thought that they were going to gain something from us, and sometimes it just doesn't work. It happens, and it happens way more often than we probably really know. I'm sure there are some stats on it about that, but you want to preserve your peace. That is something that is really important, because if you do not have the wherewithal to carry out those job duties, you do not want to carry the stress and the frustration that can wear you out because you recognize that this is not a good fit. So just be honest about that. And then I think that the reflection moment, the catalyst reflection moment in this is that it gives you the opportunity to learn something about yourself. And you may know yourself very well, and some of you may still be trying to figure out what it is that you're supposed to do. And you're still understanding what you like and dislike about certain roles and responsibilities. And that's okay. You just want to make sure that you're using the information that you're gaining to make smarter decisions down the road. You just want to make sure that you're using the information that you gain from these experiences to to refine your decision making process. And all of us have a decision making process. So every career move is a chance to learn, even if that particular uh, company does not work for you. And so I appreciate that you've listened. And I hope that this episode has helped you because it definitely helps me just to share my experiences and offer you some information that will assist you as you navigate some uncharted waters. So be thoughtful, be wise, and be strategic. And remember, crossroads reveal who you are, catalysts shape who you become. Every decision matters. So make it count. Talk to you next week.